Heya Cryptozens, it's 10 p.m. Pacific time. The date is October 18th, 2022. Welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nikodemus, and I'll be your host as we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space and the industry that surrounds it. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. MiCA, the Markets in Crypto Assets legislative package in the EU, has settled in. They're waiting for Parliament's approval before being published in the EU Journal. That said, it's not over. Crypto mining and self-custody both narrowly escaped being legislated out of the EU. Now, it's hard for me to see how they'll do that with self-custody wallets, but whatever. Crypto mining, however, is still under the gun in the EU. Today, the EU released documents that shows that they're looking at implementing the European Green Deal and the Repower EU plan. And as you've guessed, these are both energy-related plans. So a lot of this comes from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In fact, Repower EU plan was announced last May as a result of the conflict, because this has put a significant dent on the energy supplies in Europe. And so some are using this situation to advance their agenda in terms of EU politics. Here's what I mean. The Russian crisis was an opportunity for, quote, fast-forwarding the clean transition. And that comes to us right from the European Commission. They said, quote, controlling the energy consumption of the ICT sector. Now, that's a big part of their plan. And that includes controlling blockchain as well as other areas such as data centers. As it stands, Europe counts for about 10% of the crypto mined in the world. Germany and Ireland lead the way. Sweden got a big bump after mining was banned in China. So with that as a backdrop, this document would see the European Securities and Markets Authority drafting standards for crypto mining. And the authors cited a document put out by the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum. Specifically, quote, potential policy options that could be warranted to mitigate adverse impacts on the climate of technologies used in the crypto asset market. That's going to be important because there's a report due out in 2025, and the subject is the environmental impact of crypto assets. They're concerned about things like blackouts and shortages. So they want to be able to manipulate electrical distribution to crypto miners. They said, quote, in case there's a need for load shedding in the electricity systems, the EU member states must also be ready to stop crypto assets mining. Now, in case you're still wondering whether these guys are crypto mining friendly or not, here you go. They were talking about what it means if these recommendations are adopted. They said, quote, this would be a first attempt worldwide to decrease the attractiveness of Bitcoin investments and curb the price of Bitcoin. They also advocate giving investors better information about the energy use of cryptocurrencies and whether the coin that they've chosen is efficient or not. Basically a labeling of whether the chain was energy efficient. They also said that the EU would start creating international blockchain label standards for that purpose, to label those chains. The European Commission put out an open communication to the European Parliament, Council, as well as the European Economic and Social Committee and the Committee of the Regions. In this document, they said that the energy used by crypto mining has doubled in the last 2 years. And this is even more important now, because Europe is heading into winter. The European Commission is already expecting a really tough place where energy is concerned due to the chaos surrounding Russian energy supplies. And because of that, the Commission is urging member states to, quote, implement targeted and proportionate measures to lower the electricity consumption of crypto asset miners, and also, in a longer-term perspective, put an end to tax breaks and other fiscal measures benefiting crypto miners. And right now, that's under consideration in Norway. They're looking at eliminating tax breaks for Norwegian crypto miners. And while Europe is relatively smoothly moving forward with their plans for crypto adoption, some have expressed concern over their American economic partners. Maureen McGuinness is the European Commission's Financial Services Commissioner. She believes that regulating crypto assets should be a global effort. She said, quote, we do need to see other players also legislating. do need to look at global regulation of crypto. Now, this was during McGinnis's trip to D.C. Part of that trip included meeting with Representative Patrick McHenry and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She was also encouraged by the meetings and thinks that the EU and the U.S. are moving in the same direction. Now, however, she's got some concerns over the delays in getting regulations in place. She said, quote, "There could be, in time, if it grows, financial stability problems. There are also investor issues around a lack of certainty." Now, staying with Europe here, let's take a look at the UK, because they're planning on compiling a package of law reform proposals for the second half of next year. Now, what's going on here is the Law Commission of England and Wales will review international legal challenges regarding crypto. So this government-commissioned project will provide some needed insight into how international law has affected emerging technologies like cryptocurrency and digital documentation. This project is called Digital Assets, Which Law, Which Court, and it will cover international legal rules as well as how they apply in context with digital assets and documentation. So the idea is to propose legal reforms to keep the UK laws relevant. And this effort is being sponsored by the Ministry of Justice. They want to have those proposed legal reforms published for public consultation by the last half of next year. And what they're concerned about is how blockchain technology has come into conflict where a number of law-related issues are concerned. This legal uncertainty is a problem for everyone, users, businesses, and governments alike. And the problem is right in the title. Which law? Which laws apply to these assets? Which court? Who is going to have jurisdiction to have these kinds of disputes? The strengths of crypto and related assets make it difficult to regulate, and this is an attempt on their part to get a handle on it. The fact that it's intangible, respects no sovereign authority, and is geographically unstoppable makes it much difficult to define and even more difficult to regulate. And in that announcement, they did continue to highlight their goals of supporting crypto and blockchain-related technologies. And crypto is not virgin territory for the Law Commission. In the past, they've taken part in a number of law reforms, things like smart contracts and digital assets, DAOs. By the way, Mark Stewart is stepping down. He is the Financial Conduct Authority's anti-money laundering chief, where he's been in that role for 7 years. So the FCA announced that Stewart was stepping away from this role as the Executive Director of Enforcement and Market Oversight. Now, he was there when FCA became Britain's supervisory body for anti-money laundering compliance, which is the area that Stewart was in charge of. In March of 2021, he said, quote, "While we do not regulate or supervise the cryptocurrency business, these firms are required to be registered with the FCA and they are required to comply with the money laundering regulations." Now, remember back when the FCA was already working on getting the unregistered companies registered? As we reported, the FCA put FTX on that list of unregistered companies. One of the stresses of this job may have been the actual act of regulating the industry itself. There have been significant delays in processing those registration applications. However, the FCA says that these delays are based on the quality of the information that they are provided. Okay, coming back to our side of the Atlantic here, we're talking about DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. And this one is about the Uki DAO case. Now remember, the Commodity Future Trading Commission basically served everybody in that DAO by posting on their governance forum and a chatbot. One of the things that we talked about in relation to this case was Lex Punk Army. They're a legal group that's been recognized as a friend of the court on this case. And it is their view that the CFTC got it wrong, that they have to identify and directly serve any individual people who they think violated the law, rather than trying to serve the DAO as a whole. And this really highlights the need for clear regulation. That includes guidance and precedent as far as what a DAO is legally speaking. The CFTC said that Uki DAO was an incorporated association. And the case is the case, right? I haven't seen a lot of people standing up for the DAO. And that's not the problem most people have with it. The problem is how they were served. It was just a blanket service of the entire DAO at once. Another group involved is the Crypto Venture Fund Paradigm. They have also filed their own amicus brief. And in it, they're looking at what a DAO is. They said that the Commodity Exchange Act's federal statutes should be what's used. Quote, while the CEA includes an association with the definition of person, nothing in that statutory text suggests that DAO is an association. And it goes further, because as they explain, because a DAO is pretty much software, there's nobody to challenge the rules. If this case doesn't see the inside of a courtroom, instead, a summary judgment will be entered and the CFTC will get to use that case to justify future actions, which is a really efficient way to get around the rules in the APA. They said, quote, in short, there is no independent statutory basis to support the CFTC's assertion that UkiDAO is a person or an association. Without this authority, service on UkiDAO cannot be approved by this court. However, as the filing points out, the CFTC does have authority to charge individuals that they believe broke the law. So the CFTC has until November 7th to respond to these briefs. Then the CFTC has another week to respond before they all get together in court to work things out November 30th. Meanwhile, the CFTC and the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, they have launched a probe into Three Arrows Capital. And it's not your usual fare, not entirely. It's not a question of offering unregistered securities. This time, they're investigating whether or not 3AC, quote, violated rules by misleading investors about the strength of its balance sheet and not registering with the agencies. Now, for anybody new here, these guys, Three Arrows Capital, they started trading in 2017, and they were one of the big ones, one of the largest crypto funds. At the time, Nansen estimated that they had around $10 billion in assets under management, and that was in March of 2022. That is until they filed for bankruptcy in July of 2022, owing some $3.5 billion to their creditors. So, going from one bankrupt crypto business to another, we've got Voyager Digital. This is related because CEO Stephen Ehrlich and financial head Evan Parsopoulos will get to keep their jobs, even though they're the ones that decided to write a huge loan to Three Arrows Capital with no kind of due diligence. Now, in some cases, that would be enough to get you fired, at the very least. Sometimes, sheer incompetence can get you sued. But that's not what's going to happen here, even though that loan to 3AC played a key role in Voyager Digital's own decline. And so it was that on October 17th, documents were filed with the court that shows Voyager Digital has a special internal committee. That committee proposed that both the CEO and the former CF, they get to keep their own jobs and not get sued. Now see, what happened is, instead of providing an audited balance sheet, all that 3AC founder Kyle Davies had to do was to give Voyager a slip of paper that said 3AC's net asset value was $3.729 billion. There's no proof. There's no collateral. So this committee says they don't see any signs of fraud in the pair's actions. In fact, court documents indicate, quote, making additional contributions to the reorganization plan pursuant to the settlements reached with the special committee. Not only that, the company has insurance. Voyager Digital was carrying $20 million of director and officers' liability insurance. Now that $20 million, that's nothing compared to the damage done by the unsecured $350 million loan that they made last March. So when 3AC was unable to pay off that loan, here's what happened. Voyager Digital issued them a notice of default. That meant that 3AC was liquidated by Voyager Digital on June 27th. Then, Voyager followed 3AC into bankruptcy court on July 6th. Now, let's not forget how I think that this all started. This was the crash of Terra USD and Luna. Well, Terra co-founder Do Kwon popped up again. He joined the Unchained podcast from an undisclosed location, as you totally do when you're not in hiding. And he said his whole online internet personality was fake. It developed over time, but it was meant, quote, largely for entertainment value. He said, quote, in retrospect, I should have held myself to a more stringent standard. Now, as is common for him, he's not accepting any responsibility over any of it. He said that his online behavior was a reaction to the banter used by crypto Twitter. Quote, just because there's anonymous cartoon characters that are, shall we say, more liberal with the words that they're using, doesn't mean I should have followed suit. When asked what he would have done differently to prevent the Terra Black Swan event, he said, being less aggressive and less joking on Twitter. He said, quote, spending less time on social media and talking to people, I think definitely would have helped probably let me get a lot more work done. Duh. He says he regrets his posts. He calls some of his old tweets quite cringe, but he's not taking them down. Quote, people have told me to take them down, but I do not think it's worthwhile just keeping them on there, just for record keeping and posterity purposes. In the meantime, Kwon swears he's not on the run. He swears that he doesn't have anything to do with the $62 million that South Korean prosecutors want to freeze, and he swears he's cooperating with the authorities. As a final note, Kwon said that his Twitter usage came from being an introvert, and I guess I can sort of see that in his behavior. He also said that his behavior came from pressure from the Terra community, so he's throwing his own community under the bus. Quote, as Terra grew, there was more of a pull from the community to be more open and frank about my thoughts and opinions and to be more transparent about the things that we're working on. So he's still not accepting responsibility for his own actions. That's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. We'll see you tomorrow night.